No computer-related activity generates more fear and misunderstanding than computer hacking.
We will find a way in, and sometimes it can take just a matter of minutes.
Teenagers take over computers just for the thrill. White-collar criminals enjoy using computers for fraud or espionage.
Operating systems that run the internet are not secure.
Everyone who uses the internet is at risk. But are all hackers criminals?
Hackers aren't creating these holes. They're finding these vulnerabilities that are already there and telling people about them.
Some hackers claim they're really out to make the world a safer place. Can this be? This man might just be one of Britain's most dangerous hackers.
Okay, here's my hacking gear. The laptop in there, digital camera, and the radio to keep in touch, listen to the security guards, and frequency counter to find out which channel they're on today.
He's successfully hacked into banks, utilities, insurance companies, and countless multinationals.
We approached the site and found a way into the building via a service ramp. We do use concealed cameras. Really looking around to try and find some useful information. So looking in the rubbish skips.
He'll do whatever it takes to access a company's network, even if it means fishing through a rubbish bin in a quest for company details that might make his job easier.
This is where you find if people don't actually do things properly. They put the confidential waste in there. It's a bit of paper. In there, found a document with some people's names on, which we could maybe use later in social engineering. So we could phone up a help desk and claim to be this person, try and get a password reset. Keep that one for later on. Waited for people to arrive at the badge-controlled door such that we could tailgate into the building. There's a bit of a maze inside, but not much going on, hoping that it would lead to somewhere more useful. And sure enough, it was into an office area, and then went off, found somewhere quiet. This'll do me. Phone this. Now let's see if we can get onto the network. Looks like they're out for the afternoon. Just plugged in, the machine came up with an address, straight onto the network.
Once on the network, he'll find the vulnerabilities, attack the weaknesses, and on a good day, he could rip off a company's deepest secrets. The company that employs him is very pleased with the quality of his work.
The kind of things we're doing can be quite dangerous. It's a covert operation. There may be only 2 or 3 people within an organisation that are aware of the work we're doing. I'm labelled as an ethical hacker, which is a term I don't particularly like, and what I'm actually in is the business of information warfare.
With fear of malicious hackers on the rise, some businesses will actually hire IBM or other IT security specialists to try and hack into their computer network. It's a fight fire with fire strategy intended to reduce computer vulnerabilities by way of preemptive attack. Back at home base, we're given the flavour of what goes down in the field using a dummy server for a mock attack.
So once we're connected into the network, the first thing we want to do really is see what traffic's around.
The tools of the trade include programs called sniffers, scanners, and password crackers.
Initially, we need kind of surveillance tools, network sniffing tools, which watch the traffic on the network, so we can start to build up a picture of the systems, the network infrastructure that may be there. So we'll run a network sniffer which captures all that data, and we see it streaming past on...
In addition to providing an overview of network traffic, sniffers can eavesdrop on the flow of data across a network and hope to intercept user names and passwords. All internal traffic not encrypted is at risk.
We then go into some simple scanning, service scanning, to identify on a particular machine the kind of services that are running.
Network scanning tools look for a variety of known vulnerabilities, from passwords that can be downloaded to email that can be intercepted. They will also identify machines on the network that respond to the probe and will allow remote exploits to begin.
We then move into more of an attack phase with vulnerability tools and exploit tools. The password tends to be the weakest link generally. It's the way we get in most often. There are quite a few programs around to crack passwords. Typically, crack is used on Unix systems, and LoftCrack is used against NT systems. The password cracking programs use a dictionary of words, typically with a set of rules. So they'll run through and try words with uppercase and lowercase characters and attempt to guess what the password is. The other technique, which is a brute force crack, is to run through all the possible permutations of the letters for the length of password given, but that obviously takes a lot longer.
Some passwords, like personal names or the name of a favourite football club, get cracked in a matter of seconds. Harder to guess passwords may take only minutes to fall. In the Hacker Toolkit is a collection of double-edged swords. These programs have been developed by hackers and security professionals and can be used to exploit vulnerabilities or expose and reduce them. Many of these hacker tools can be freely downloaded from the internet. Some hackers have made a virtual sport out of finding and publishing on the net the bugs and vulnerabilities in some of the world's most popular operating systems. It's an activity which is not illegal and arguably has led to improved security. Cult of the Dead Cow is one of America's most controversial hacker groups. They've got an ominous name and members in Boston, Texas and San Francisco. They've decided to come out of the shadows to explain what they do and why they do it.
Hackers aren't creating these holes. They aren't out there, making a way to take down these things. They're finding these vulnerabilities that are already there and telling people about them. They're saying, hey, look, there's this issue with your system where someone could take it down. And
they mostly have day jobs in IT security. Some CDC members helped to develop LoftCrack, a password cracking tool which has set the standard amongst IT security specialists.
We've been learning about this stuff for years and have been thinking about this stuff for years. It's kind of like, we sort of expected that we would find a flaw in a system and publish the flaw in the system and then it would get fixed. And that seems like a sort of rational attitude to us because you find this issue and then you make it better and that's logical. But you get a traditional corporate world that doesn't want to accept these problems.
Whether or not the hackers publicize it, the problem's still there. There could be someone else who might not have good motives at all, who knows about it and can take advantage of it. Like the recent denial of service attacks. Everyone's like, oh, they're hackers. Whereas as far as the hacker community is concerned, they were just vandals.
The white hat hackers, that has been their stated goal all along. They hack to point out vulnerabilities in order to get them fixed. That's what they say they're doing. The black hat hackers tend to hack in order to show there's a vulnerability, but they're a little more or a lot more cavalier about who they give this information to. The white hats will typically find a problem in, let's say, Microsoft software and tell Microsoft and give Microsoft a chance to fix it. The black hats will find a problem and publish it to the world.
It's continually changing. If every day there are new vulnerabilities announced, the hackers, and they're just publishing the stuff straight onto the internet as they find it. Some of it's just noise, some of it's good stuff, which we can then utilise and incorporate into our testing regime.
Hacker conventions are another place where well-paid security professionals might pick up some free pointers. In Berlin, Germany, the Chaos Computer Club is having its 16th annual hacker convention. They've been through spy scandals in the 1980s and exposed computer banking vulnerabilities in the 90s. The CCC is one of Europe's oldest and most established hacker clubs.
IT security and hackers, sometimes they really admire each other. IT security develops something and the hackers test it, and the hackers develop something and IT security tests it. And somebody who's good at IT security consultant will always have an eye on the hacker scene and vice versa.
Well, I think a hacker is someone who's interested in the internals of a computer and what's behind the monitor. I think everyone who's interested in the scene behind is a hacker. It's like someone who has a new car and he looks into the motor.
Not all hackers are criminals, and many people who consider themselves hackers are simply computer enthusiasts, motivated to understand black box technology at its deepest level.
Today, everything is done with a computer. So a computer is used as a tool for criminals, as for terrorists, as for normal human beings, as for peace activists. So everyone uses a computer as a tool, but someone who robs out a bank and uses a computer as a tool does not become a hacker. He's still a bank robber, just using an adequate tool of the time.
The hacker community has its own code of ethics. A true hacker should not use their skills to break into networks or cause damage in any way. The term used by hackers for people who violate this code is crackers, and to do a crack is frowned upon. But not all hackers are angels.
Example given, once I hacked our school network. I wrote a small program which just stays in memory and reads the password when the user types it in. The teacher actually had a different opinion.
If you decide to do something good, then it's okay. If you decide to do something bad, your reputation goes down the drain.
The CCC learned the hard way the dangers of exploiting computer bugs. In the 1980s, some members were caught cruising US military computers and selling government secrets to the KGB. It was one of the world's first major scandals exploiting computer bugs, and the US Space Agency, NASA, was a favorite place to visit.
The KGB story was the first public known story where computer hacking methods and people knowing how to do it were used as espionage for Eastern secret services. So with the end of the Cold War, the work of the secret services didn't stop. The meanings of computer infrastructures is getting bigger every day. So we have lots of fields of dangers and espionage and stuff like that still around us. This is not an 80s story. So, but in the 80s, this story was for us a very new, and I mean, I can tell you, I was one of the people who also was involved in this NASA hacking and stuff like that. And there was a group of people inside the hacking scene, which were just 3 or 4, which made money out of it, and we all didn't know. So this was also about trust and about knowing the borders, and you know, so this was the reason for a lot of police trouble, and this was not a so nice time, you can guess.
With the end of the Cold War, the German government has started to listen to what this hacker club has to say when it comes to computer security and privacy.
If you today have a computer running in the internet and you go to the company who sold you the operating system or the firewall use it, they'll tell you, hey, this is a secure system and everything will be looking fine until you really find out what's going on.
One thing about bugs on the net, security holes, is that they tend to last forever. If a security hole is discovered and the manufacturer of that system makes a patch for it, and many of the people who own that system download the patch and install it and make their systems more secure against that particular vulnerability, there are many more owners of that same system who didn't download that patch and whose systems are still vulnerable. So for any vulnerability you find, and you can look in databases and find these vulnerability databases owned by security companies, databases owned by hackers and crackers. You can find these vulnerabilities in their hundreds for Unix systems, in their thousands for Microsoft systems. And you can search the net for systems that still exhibit that vulnerability, and you'll find them.
Before hackers get a chance to pull apart a new piece of software, companies will put it through their own debugging process first. Penelope Broomer is part of the Microsoft Build team. The Build team are the frontline troubleshooters who update the code on almost a daily basis as problems are identified and fixed.
Say there's a fix that needs to be taken, instead of building it incrementally in that we would just build one or perhaps two subdirectories, we build the whole tree.
They speak a language that maybe some hackers can understand.
If we get these data center fixes today, we can release a build and start taking check-ins for tomorrow.
Service pack in data center?
We didn't release a data center build on Friday. We didn't release one
Thursday, Friday, or today. We're the third day on this build.
Second, a delay.
This is not even like a core problem. I mean, it's these bits that we don't even
Somebody's changed the debug code to do deeper level debug.
Right. I was going to wait to hear from you guys.
But even with deeper level debugging, bugs slip through the net. Behind user-friendly graphics and point-and-click convenience are over 30 million lines of code, which make up the guts of the system.
It's got the break-in shell.
While there are many useful software tools to help the debugging process, it would be impossible to write a program that could check for all potential bugs in a system so complex.
I think about 4,000 people were actually involved in the testing and development of Windows 2000. Hackers, people out in the world are always going to look for security holes. Sometimes you hire these people and you have them find the problem first, but you can only really dedicate so much resources to doing that, right? And then eventually you have to ship the product.
In an earlier position with another company, I built a product that was rated what we call A1 in the U.S. government evaluation criteria for secure systems.
Steve Lipner is in charge of software security at Microsoft.
And we actually had it running, and then we canceled it because nobody wanted to buy it. In the real world, security is one factor that customers are interested in. Functionality is another, performance is another, time to market is another.
Security comes as a trade-off with other aspects of software. Software that's more secure is less easy to use. People like ease of use. People like accessible software. Security is hard to program, it's hard to test, it's darn near impossible to test thoroughly, and it's very hard to use.
In the past, most of the systems on the internet were Unix. That was where it started out. And there were loads of problems, vulnerabilities that existed in there. Over the years, the technology has matured and the problems have been ironed out, new techniques have been brought in, so the actual occurrences of problems with Unix platforms today is pretty small. By comparison, the newer operating systems, they're a lot more immature, the bugs are still being found, and the fixes are going to take some years to bring it up to the same level of maturity as some of the older platforms, which means that the instances of hacking are on the increase.
Microsoft operating systems at first were meant for a single computer, and there was no thought really to hooking several computers together and how they would interact and what they would do.
The Windows 95, 98 systems are designed as single user systems, okay? And so they're basically designed with the assumption that if you're on that machine, it's your machine, and it's not protecting you from yourself.
The fact that this desktop operating system suddenly got network functionality dropped on it, and that programs that had never talked together now could, added new vulnerabilities.
While Microsoft hoped to minimize the hazards by designing a network interface, the core program, MS-DOS, upon which Windows 95 and 98 were built, showed all its cracks and vulnerabilities when exposed to the rough and tumble of today's internet.
When we are looking at breaking into some of these systems, we identify a target.
In addition to operating system insecurities, the internet itself is extremely vulnerable. While the physical network was originally designed to survive a nuclear attack, the data traffic over the net can all too easily be compromised.
The internet today uses a protocol which isn't inherently secure. The data packets are sent and reassembled using very basic sequence numbers and acknowledgements. And that makes it open to abuse. People can replay the data, they can change data, and the recipient has no idea that that's occurred.
These core vulnerabilities affect everyone who uses the internet. Emails can be read, altered or forged, banking and credit card details intercepted, net surfing monitored, and all services disrupted.
The next generation of the internet protocol will prevent that by using more secure techniques.
Once computer defenses have been cracked, and before calling it a day,
it may be appropriate to use a Trojan horse.
Trojan horses are the stuff of spy thrillers and computer espionage.
We could plant a Trojan horse in program directory areas or
a well-placed Trojan horse can create a backdoor for ease of future access.
The next time a user logs onto the system, we could use that to gain access with all of that user's privileges within the system.
Their whole thing was like, oh, you know, it's a backdoor. Any operating system can have a backdoor. And our point was, no, it's not so much a backdoor as the entire back of the house was missing.
BO and BO2K are programs written by members of the Cult of the Dead Cow.
Here, and I launch the BO2K configuration program.
BO, which stands for Back Orifice, if unwittingly downloaded onto your system, will allow the person who sent it to stealthily access all data on your computer and hijack all of its functions. It appeared to be the ultimate backdoor program. When BO2K was released at a hacker convention in Las Vegas, it was branded one of the most malicious hacker tools ever. Users of 100 million Microsoft operating systems were in for a shock.
A lot of the complaints we got about Back Orifice was that it was this sort of sheerly malicious thing, and you know, there was no real use for it. And
was it a tool designed to empower hackers, or were the shock tactics of the CDC really meant to expose computer vulnerabilities?
Like 60 or 70% of the computers on the internet, you could run software on them without the person who owned the computer knowing anything about that, and that software could have complete control over the computer. So Back Orifice initially was kind of designed as a proof of concept of how horribly insecure all of these people just getting on the internet really were.
By and large, the sort of community, the technical community reaction was that was what it was. It was a Trojan horse. It was released basically as a hacker tool, and the primary usage of it, you know, in the real world, was to put folks at risk.
Back Orifice could have been written for Unix or for Windows to infect, for Macintosh to infect those systems. Windows is where the numbers are. That's why BO2K exists for Windows.
You know, I could say, man, I hate all these semi-anonymous people who notice this problem and write something that exploits that problem, or I could say, hey, maybe the person who sold me the software should fix this problem so it's not an issue.
Back Orifice was an attempt, somewhat admittedly idealistic attempt, to try to force Microsoft to recognize these problems and fix them.
BO2K were not vulnerabilities. They weren't exploiting vulnerabilities. If you got one of them onto your system somehow and got it installed, then it would run on your system just as any other piece of software would.
If you get your system infected with back orifice, it's because somebody sent you email and you clicked on something to execute it. You have to run something on your system. You have to do it yourself to install back orifice.
It's just the system is designed so that applications can take it over this way.
Essentially, any operating system today is exposed to Trojan horses. We've done research prototypes of systems that weren't exposed to Trojan horses. So far, the experience with those research prototypes has been that they pretty much render a software product unusable.
You can't defend against something you don't know about. There are many other programs that do the same stuff that BO and BO2K do. In fact, there are other programs out before BO and BO2K, just nobody knew about them, so nobody was protecting against them.
The people who know about the vulnerability are already exploiting it, perhaps. But there's a real difference between a handful of hackers, a couple of hacker clubs knowing about a thing and putting it out on the web where hundreds of thousands of people will read about it tomorrow and millions the next day. It's a difference in scale.
We think that there's a line to be drawn between what we call full disclosure and full exposure. Okay, if somebody goes out with one of these vulnerabilities to the internet and sort of says, "Surprise Microsoft, surprise customers, here's a vulnerability," then basically we think that that's putting our customers at risk, and so we would rather have the opportunity to work with the hackers, the customers, the folks who discover these things, get a chance to get our patch, our correction to the problems in place, and then we go public with the hackers, acknowledging their contribution to discovering the flaw and to keeping the customers safe.
Say you find a massive vulnerability in an operating system and you tell the operating system vendor and they say, all right, well, don't tell anyone about this and we should have it fixed in a few months. Then for those few months, all the people that are running this software are just as vulnerable as they would be if you didn't do anything about this.
For years, the auto industry resisted putting seat belts into cars and then airbags later on, saying, nobody's going to be willing to pay extra for seat belts or an airbag.
There are things computer users can do to reduce the danger of Trojan horses. Think twice before double-clicking on suspect attachments. Intrusion detection programs alert users if computer functions are being remotely accessed. And network or personal firewalls can be used to filter the data traffic and reduce exposure.
Something like the personal firewall software that's just coming out, that's a really good step forward. And I think that's great that people are starting to do that. And I think that everyone should run that. And I don't have, it definitely makes it harder to use BO2K in an unauthorized way. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, like I was saying before, I think that better computer security is in everyone's best interest.
I don't believe that you're more secure not knowing about vulnerabilities that exist. There isn't any security in obscurity. The network we have now, it's amazing it got as far as it has in terms of the amount of e-commerce and the amount of dollars that flow across it, as insecure as it is.
Quite frighteningly, we are very successful